Hi there, and welcome everybody to our Dog Training Summit panel. Without further delay, my panelists all thinking, come on in, get on with it. Without further delay, let me introduce my illustrious panel, and then we'll let them talk, and I shall try to be quiet. I see Kelly going woohoo at that point.
Illustrious. So, yeah, quiet. We'll see how long that lasts.
Julie Case. Wave, Julie. Julie
Hi.
Case is
Hi.
the owner. The owner and founder of Ultimate Canine. She's a certified law enforcement instructor and master trainer with 27 years experience training dogs for families, police departments, therapy, service work, as well as for special forces. Julie specializes in the development and training of socially and environmentally stable puppies for working in schools, developmental centers for children, police departments, and the military. Kelly Dunbar is the training wave, Kelly. Kelly, wave, yes. Kelly Dunbar is the training director for Serious Puppy and Dog Training, the originator of off-leash puppy classes and reward-based dog training, the founding principal of Dunbar Academy, an online educational resource for dog professionals and owners, and creator of Open Paw, a non-profit educational resource that provides education and training for shelter workers, volunteers, and animal shelters. She writes regularly, and very well, I should say, for several publications and has lectured around the world. Kelly has 4 Belgian Shepherds, both Malinois and Working Turfs, who she competes with in French ring sport, plus 2 tiny terriers that provide comic relief and many humbling moments daily. There was a typo there. I think you said 2 tiny terrors.
Either way, but
I'm
oh my
sure
goodness.
you meant terriers.
I left Hundi out, the Rottweiler.
Amanda Gagnon, wave Amanda. Amanda Gagnon is an anthrozoologist, dog trainer, and dog behavior consultant. She is the founder and training director of Amanda Gagnon Dog Training, where she teaches group classes, private training sessions, online courses, and apprenticeship programs. Amanda has a master's degree in anthrozoology, is certified by the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, and is a professional member of the Association of Professional Dog Trainers. Amanda's been featured on Good Morning America, Inside Edition, Fox and Friends, Good Day, Philadelphia Dogster, Manhattan Sideways, Sirius Radio, and Future TV. I'm sure that was a lot of very early mornings getting out of bed.
Yeah.
Go Rosie Haffenden. Joe Rosie, can you wave? Joe Rosie has a degree in applied psychology and a postgrad in animal behavior, but her passion is hands-on dog training out in the field. Joe Rosie is an accredited expert witness in court in the UK. She built and ran her own training school in Sussex and has lectured around the globe from New Zealand to Alabama, from Paris to California.
I like that.
I'm sorry, it makes me laugh. From New Zealand to Alabama. Woo! She has written 3 books and presented 3 primetime TV shows about dog training. Let's get to it. This is when I shall try to be quiet. Please feel free to interact with each other. I have just 2 questions. Question 1. How would you define dog training? I mean, what's it all about? And obviously this definition is from your point of view. So anyone jump in at any time, please interrupt, interact, and off you go. So what's it all about?
I guess for me, dog training is about providing an appropriate education for the animal to live in the environment by which they are going to live. So an appropriate education might be for a police dog or for a sports dog or for a family pet, very different.
That's very well thought out. I like that. I like the words education, and I like education with the expectation of what they have to do. Any comments, anyone?
I like that a lot too. I think the same, especially like that you mentioned context, because when you say dog trainer to every different person, they have a different concept. Some people picture circus dog tricks. Some people picture canine sports. Some people picture police dog training. And those are very, very different. So someone comes to you and says, hey, could you train my dog? The first thing you have to find out is what the heck they mean by that. So I love that. I love the context specific answer. And I think for me, it's also, I want to pull the humans into the equation a lot. So it's educating the human and the dog about what they're both going to need to have a good relationship together in whatever context that is.
Yes, I think that's a great point, Amanda, because everyone thinks, everyone, so many people, they come for companion dog training specifically, in particular, and maybe in other venues as well. They say they want you to train the dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here, dog training is magic, and you put your hands on the dog and they'll behave. Whereas it is obviously, it's an interspecies interaction. And to me, it's a language, right? It's teaching them a common language and giving the humans and the dogs some way to communicate clearly with each other. And I do think with each other, because we want to teach dogs how to understand people's wishes, and we need to teach people how to read dogs and their intention, behaviors, and their emotions, hopefully their body language, so that we can take two different languages, and hopefully dog training is a third language where they can meet.
I have to agree with Kelly. I always say dog training is not magic, and they already know how to sit. They already know how to track a deer. They already know how to catch a mouse and how to lay down. We have to teach them exactly the human language, whether it's Russian or Dutch or English, whatever that language is. It's just thousands of repetitions, patience. I call it the formula of 3 I's: imprint, improve, impress. That's dog training to me.
That's nice. I like
that. I love the eyes.
Oh, you have a formula I use all the time, Ian, the 3D. Traction, duration. So mine is imprint, improve, impress.
I didn't.
You have the
3Ds weren't my idea. That just one of the many things, you breed or hear, and then it becomes yours. But
you have the 3 E's, Ian.
Pardon?
Don't you? You have the 3 E's: efficient,
efficacy,
easy, efficient, effective, and enjoyable. Yeah, I have 4 E's.
Enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah. But when I talk, I usually take the enjoyable, the reward-based, the positive nature for granted. I always talk about, is it easy? Is it quick? Is it effective? Yeah. Thank you for my 4 E's. Let's promote.
And I think the quick, which the efficient, I suppose, in that is really important, especially when you're dealing with companion dogs, because as trainers, we're nerds, right? We love behavior, we love observing dogs. We could watch all day, and 2 dogs interacting or 1 dog just sniffing about, and we really care about the why and the how, and as much as people may love their family companion, we have to remember as companion dog trainers that most people don't have the time or interest level that we do. So, there's usually, almost always, I think, more than one pathway to get to an end result. But I think one of the things that pet dog trainers and owners need to consider is you don't need the fastest way, the fastest way. You need, there's so many factors, which I think we should talk about to consider when you create a plan. But you do need to make it not a 2-year-long process, if possible, or a 6-month process. Most people don't have the time, energy, or patience or interest to go with the long road. So that's kind of an interesting, I don't know.
I often think it's a bit like when I take my car to the garage. But I think some people, when they bring their dog to a dog trainer, it's kind of similar. They're like, but I do need to do my lessons. I need to learn how to drive it. I need to learn the basics of how to change the oil or change a tire. But I don't want to know about the combibulator that's in that engine and when it's split, how it's split, and how to fix it. Like, can you fix it? Give it back to me and then tell me how to drive it. And I think some people are like that. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. And I think as an industry of dog trainers, we need to make sure that we are catering towards that type of person as well, where they don't really want to understand about, Skinner and Pavlov and all the background of everything. And actually, they just want to know how to drive their car effectively every day. And they want us to try and put in those prevention techniques to ensure that things don't go wrong again in the future.
I think that's a very important point, because we're actually all like that with things that lay outside of our passion. And I find that a lot of dog trainers are a little sort of high horse, the way they will talk down to an owner, like that you shouldn't have got a dog if you don't want to spend 24/7 training it, like I do. And yeah, they love their dog. They've got a dog and they want it to work for them with the constraints that they have. So it's a very important point, because, you drop off your car, the one question you ask is, when can I pick it up? When's it going to be fixed? And so that's how a lot of dog owners feel about their dog. And that's our job. I'm sorry. You don't say, well, we got a 3-month program for you, or where dog training has come from for 70 years, which was repetitive obedience drills on leash, and people were in class for 3 years every week. I mean, I couldn't, that's how I started.
Those were nerds, though. Those were early nerds, prototypical dog nerds.
No, they were forced to. You see,
or they were English.
No, they were dog owners, and that was the only thing available to them. The only training offered were AKC or KC obedience classes, and they went on forever. It was more like a social club,
Yeah, that's where the English part comes in. I think in England there's a culture where people, but in England people like dog training is a recreational hobby for a lot of people. There's a lot of clubs and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to comment on this English bashing thing. No, the English part is, I'll tell you, when I went and gave my first puppy training workshop in England, I was talking about puppy classes, and someone said, you charge for your classes? That's the English thing. They were all free, Yeah, we actually professionalized it over stateside here. So sorry, I got to shut up. Yeah.
Okay, I need to shut up too, but I have only one more thing to say. Joe, I've never really thought of it about being like an auto mechanic kind of situation, and I definitely see where it is. But there's also, there is a human side to it, right? So it is relational. I've always thought of it more as like couples therapy.
Mm-hmm.
That,
I think it depends on whether you're talking about like behavior cases and problems where there's a relationship breakdown, when there's specific problems, for example, if breed specific needs aren't being met, or you need to kind of reevaluate who the two people are in the couple and reintroduce them and say, actually, this is your dog and this is what they like. And I think you think your dog's like this, but actually they're like that, or vice versa. You think your owner's like this, but actually they're like that. I think that's one thing. But I think that when it comes to your average Joe and your regular pet owners who have kind of done a little bit of research or found a dog they like, and they've got an average Joe dog in an average Joe situation, I do think it's very possible, and certainly in England and in Spain, for a dog owner to really love their pet, but to not want to train their pet all the time, and for them to kind of expect the dog trainer to be a bit more like school, and for them to come in and train the dog to do the average Joe things like walk nicely on a lead and come back when they're called, without the more complex side of this whole like relationship management thing. I think the relationship management thing is one side of things, and some trainers really, really emphasize that side of things, which is fine. But I think it's almost like a different job, really, to evaluate the individuals and to really work on those sides of the relationship between the dog and the owner. And I feel like it almost needs a different title to dog trainer in some respects. And I think some people are starting to call it different things because it's almost a slightly different job. There's definitely aspects of that job in being a dog trainer, but that isn't the job. And I think that for a lot of the average Joe client, they just want a well-behaved dog that they can walk to the beach and have a picnic without it jumping up at people or flying after chickens or whatever. And they kind of want to be able to go, tell me what I need to do on a short-term basis to get to that point, and then I'm going to finish the dog's education and I want to live my life, which I think is fine.
I think there's a little bit of both in it, right? I think that I think it's unusual to come across a dog-human pair where there isn't any relationship element whatsoever, right? So I see it as somewhere kind of in the middle there. I often think of it as marriage counseling or relationship counseling, especially when there's a total breakdown. But no matter what, even for the lighter stuff, someone who comes to you, they do want that, just the recall, nice leash manners. I do find that I have to get to know that individual person. That's why I say it's so much about human training for me. Like, I'm not going to go in and teach them like Pavlov and things like that. They don't care. They're not interested. I want to go in and find out what's the game that's going to motivate that human. Just the same way I often teach my apprentices, like, look at that human the same way, and I mean this as a compliment, that you would look at the animal, the dog, right? Look at them the same way because they are an animal. They have things that motivate them. They have things that will make them really enjoy this relationship with their dog so that they can continue the training that needs to be continued. I'm going to do everything I can while I'm there, but if it's going to fall apart when I leave, I need to give you a game that you want to play, right? And so thinking of it as games and thinking of it as fun and taking it out of the like, oh, you got to be an academic to train your dog now. You have to memorize all this. You got to work at 15-minute intervals 30 times a day. Like, nobody wants to do that. I almost feel like I'm more of a coach than anything sometimes, if that makes sense.
What do games bring to dog training? I mean, as soon as you say games, my ears perk up. And so what are the advantages of playing games?
Well, you got to think about what reinforces the human, and that's the fun. Right. So them having fun, them seeing results with their dog. So some of the things that reinforce the human can't be controlled. Like, is their dog going to be successful immediately? And that's why if you can go in and you can show them success right away, great. But if you can't, you got to give them some other reinforcers. So do they like to play? Do they get competitive with other people? What is it that's going to bring that out? And so a lot of times games help us to take it into a different place where it's not adversarial with your dog. It's something fun and gamified.
On your team.
Yeah, it's addicting even to like play with your dog.
Anyone else about games? What do games bring to the training arena?
Well, certainly when I think about play, I think play is probably the most underutilized skill by both trainers and to teach owners. Like, we're very quick to teach owners when to give food and how to deliver food in a training environment. And I think we underutilize the play element, because I think that play as the various different types of game that fall under that umbrella of play are probably the things that bond most dog and an owner. Mm-hmm. You know, without a doubt, like the way I bond with my dogs is through playing with games, playing and playing with people as well. You know, that body to body contact, especially with a lot of the breeds that I do a lot of training with, like Mallies and Bullies and those kind of dogs that really seek out that tactile contact. Playing and appropriate wrestling and playing with your body against their body and stuff. I think this stuff's really, really underutilized across the board, really.
Yeah, I think the play, you have a normal person. People are so stilted. As soon as they get to dog class, they won't talk, they won't praise, they won't say thank you, they won't jump like a frog. So games, I think, normalizes it. No, it's you and your buddy, the dog. Just hang out, chill, do stuff. Yeah. And in the process, you're changing behavior and you're teaching the dog communication and you're learning the dog's languages as well. But, you know, to me, as soon as you say games, this gives dog training so much, and it does it in a lovely way, I think. So any more ideas?
Well, for me, games, everything I train, everything I do is based on games. Whether it's finding drugs, narcotics, you know, weapons, explosives, everything is based on the game.
With your dog. I should emphasize with the dog. If that quote is taken out of context, they're going to think, well, Julie's always looking for drugs and explosives. Yeah.
So for me, everything we do, believe it or not, is based on the game, because you can't take a leash and drag the dog to the bomb and say, here's the bomb, we're going to die if you don't sit on and show us where it is. You have to convince this dog to go hunt for it and go have fun. And it's all based on games. And Ian, you witnessed me train before police dogs, where we look for dogs that are crazy for toys. And the same thing with our police officers or special forces. One of the hardest things to teach is to praise the dog, to be that playful, animated person. And, you know, we always say, talk to them like they're a 2-year-old child that just found an Easter egg. So if you got to go, hoo, you know, we found this drug that is now very important for us, but the dog doesn't know any different. And the same thing with pet dogs. You know, when we're training, whether we're training puppies around children must be playing to create all that chaos. Children must be playing and doing their normal things that they do in real life. They're not going to be sitting like we want them to. They're going to be banging a little truck on top of the coffee table and jumping off the couch and screaming and running. So we recreate that. We recreate those games. In fact, I have a game that's called the Storm. And depending on the level of puppies and the age of puppies, we call it Storm level 2, level 1, level 3. So if it's a category 1 storm, the children are a little bit crazy, but a little bit calmer. And they know, these kids already know. So I pre-train the kids and I say, okay, kids, category 2 storm. And then kids go a little bit crazy. And if I say category 3, they go really loud and screaming and jumping. So that's also games with kids, with children. And while they're playing games, we are training these puppies through games. So I think games, everything is based on the game. You can only achieve so much through compulsive force training. You're not going to be able to ever succeed 100%. I think through compulsive and force training. There are so many ways of training, but I think the most successful way is through games. And same thing with humans, right? We learn to do something that feels good. We will do this over and over again, and games feel good. We choose to play voluntarily. If we come home, in Russia, in Great Britain, it's the same thing. All men usually go outside and play, with a soccer ball. They play what we call football. Our football is soccer. You don't have to pay people to go play. Kids play for free. You don't have to, bribe them to play. I think that's one of the successful ways to train an animal and a human.
Yeah, I think all of you here are mentioning people. And to me, in a single sentence, dog training, it's all about people. And it's all about your attitude as a trainer, how you're going to engage with the owner. It's all about having fun with the owner and teaching them to have fun with their dog. So we're training the owner so they can train the dog. And that's where we have to realize, the owner is not us. They don't have anywhere near your experience and expertise. And so we have to change our mindset, I think, when we're teaching owners to now to use different methods that are easier, simpler, less time consuming. The 4 E's, we really have to concentrate on that. Because the old way was, I'm a trainer, your dog's on leash, you will do what I tell you to do with your dog. It was that way for 70 years. Oh, and by the way, you can't get in class until your dog's a year old. There was nowhere to go, So, yeah, it's fascinating that I have 2 questions here. And when I ask the first one, I know I won't ask the second one because you will answer it before me. Like Kelly was the first to jump in, then Rosie. It's all about making training sparkle. We could make it really boring as it was. But now we're making training sparkle and we're really taking into account the people. So back to the original question again, define training. What do we actually do then, very specifically?
Playing games.
Eyes go wide, deers in the headlights.
Julie.
Yes, I think, as we just talked about games, I think dog training in a way is role playing. It's playing, hopefully everybody uses the same mentality. It should be fun, and then it should be playing. It should be playing with the dog, whether role playing with the client or playing with the dog. It should be all based on repetitions through play.
Let's ask a question another way. Like, although I think, 3 of you compete, don't you, with your dogs? And as I know from reading your bios. So when you're training a dog for competition, you're teaching it specific things. And so that's what I meant by training, the training process now back to just the dog. What are we trying to do with the dog? Kelly mentioned, we're trying to open communication channels. Yeah, we're putting stuff on cue. The dog can't mind read, although they come very close by reading the nuances of our facial expressions and body cues. But how do we let the dog know what we want it to do? And so I look on, I guess, the training process as changing behavior. increasing or decreasing frequency of behaviors, putting them on cue. Much more important, modifying the dog's temperament and personality. Much more important, modifying the owner's behavior, motivating them. We could apply the same 3 I's to the owner. And so let's say, how then, what are the stumbling blocks we could have in this process? Let's see if we can pinpoint the things that will stop us doing all of this, making it fun, a game, an interaction, a communication process.
There's a long list of things, I think.
Rank order your long list, Julie. What's the number one thing?
For me, the dog, you cannot make chicken soup out of chicken poop, right? So
say that again.
You cannot make chicken soup out of chicken poop. So you have a dog that is not social, that is fearful, afraid of its own shadow, and you are here to train this dog to, learn 30 commands. It's not magic. There's some dogs that you cannot go past certain point in training. So if the dog has not been properly socialized and properly environmentally exposed, you may not be able to achieve certain tasks. And also the same thing applies to the owner. If the owner, comes to you with expectations of you doing all the magic here and they have no interest in reinforcing it, you are only as successful as the owner is. So you can teach this dog 30 commands, they're going to go home and the dog is going to do exactly what is natural for them. And it's not sitting quietly, politely when they see a squirrel or another dog, or not pooping or peeing on the carpet, because those things are natural. We don't have to teach them to do these things. If we taught them and the owner is not reinforcing it, then our hands are tied, because the dog will go back to what his DNA is telling him to do. So I think the start is to have, to do a successful type of training. You have to have some type of motivation in a dog. The dog has to have, some kind of motivation, whether it's through, food or toy or whatever, and the dog has to be handleable. Sometimes we have dogs coming from a shelter and it's a 6-year-old dog that's never been touched. It wants to bite everything in sight, and the person adopted it, and it has, the person has 3 kids in the family, and they bring it to us and say, well, can you train it not to bite my kids? It's 6 years old. It's never been around kids. It is absolutely impossible.
So let's take that. Yeah, you're hitting at what I think is the most important point. It's, put it this way, I want people to understand our frustration as trainers. And my biggest frustration is always the same. When I meet a dog, my heart goes out to it. As soon as I start training it, I love it. It's 3-year-old shepherd, or white whiskered dog or whatever. I always want to be able to turn the clock back, but I can't. And I think this is one of the biggest crimes in the whole world of dogs, that puppies don't get anywhere near the handling, neonatally, the environmental enrichment, the socialization that they should have got. And so most owners are behind before they start. So if I was saying, well, what holds training back? I would say the age of the dog. It's missed out on so much before we get it. So we as trainers are always playing catch up. How many people do you know will have a dog-dog reactivity program that, say, requires a month or 2 months? If you had the puppy, how long would it take?
I think that the responsibility there lies with the breeder, and I think that it lies not just with the socialization. So we've hand-reared and raised 2 litters of Malinois in the last 2 months, but we've also raised a bunch of other foster and rescue puppies over the last year or so. And we start socializing the puppies when they're hand rears at around 2.5 to 3 weeks, and when they have a mother here, then around 3.5 weeks. And we socialize them in our arms because they can't go down because it's Southern Spain and Parvo, but we'll socialize them up here for the whole time. We'll take them out and about. They'll go pretty much everywhere with us from that time, and depending on what the puppy's reaction is, depends on how quickly we can continue that that process. And what I would say is that it's not just about that period, and it's not just about the breeders doing the socialization, it's about choosing the right bitch and dog in the first place, because genetics do hold you back even when you're raising puppies, when the puppies are inherently frightened of the world, or they're inherently wary of people. The two Mali litters that we've just done this last 2 months are very, very different in terms of their genetics. One of them's very much a working line, and the other is a more feral farm type line, and was rescued from a farmer that was drowning them. And these two lines, even though they were the same breed, have been very different to socialize, because the more feral farming type breed were inherently a lot more wary of people. And so we were unable to process as quickly because their recovery rates were much shorter. So they were taking a lot longer to recover. So we were having to repeat the same level of kind of chaos around them in order for the puppies to recover, and to begin to recover quicker and quicker, and then be like, okay, this is fine, and habituate to that situation. Took longer before we could then escalate that situation. I think the responsibility of all that lies with the breeder, but not just in terms of that socialization period, also in terms of which dogs they breed together to start with.
Yeah, I think as trainers, we are changing the behavior of the dog presented to us. We should stick with the principles, that we can change, that in terms of genes, we can't, or it's difficult for us. Let's put it this way. I've tried for 50 years and failed to influence breeders. And the point I always make is, when two dogs are doing it out there, well, let's forget genes now, because the gene team has just made its play. And from now on, the only things we can do are socialization and training. But I think more of the owners. What can they do? They have no choice in which dogs are bred. And they have really very little choice in choosing the right type of dog for them. I mean, we know they make ridiculous choices. I think as a trainer, no, okay, this family, 2 lawyers living together with 23 children, they wanted a Malinois. Okay, we have to train it for them. We can't just say that was a stupid choice. It's a bit late for that. And when I think then, how do we affect or change the breeding practices in this country, which, by the way, I think are horrific? I think the only way is by educating owners. I think the only way breeders will change is by the supply and demand chain. Once owners understand, and I don't want to make this a downer, but how they're royally getting screwed by spending a lot of money and getting bullied into which one they should get. Oh, you can't have this male, you've got to have this female, and you can't chop his doodads off, or you have to chop his doodad, all these rules. The only way things can change is if they now start to vet the breeders as much as the breeders vet them. And what they really want is a dog that's going to live to be 10 or 15 or 17 or 20. They don't want a dog that's dead at 5. So just that aspect of breeding. But I think owners can do this. When they see what they could have, look, I've seen all the videos thus far. And for me, the video that really hit me in the face was the shortest video of all. Julie just sent these little clips of dogs which have been socialized and dogs that haven't. It was chalk and cheese, light and day. These dogs could run up to people and sit and be hugged and greeted. The others you couldn't touch. And that's what owners need to see. And I think of all the videos of us training and doing the things that we do, and that to me was the one that made the difference. Have you been socialized, and have you seen things to prepare you for life or not?
Okay, but can we talk about socialization and what people think that is? And largely due to Sirius and how it has been interpreted throughout the world, people have this, not because of what Sirius was offering, but the way that it was interpreted and filtered through people's brains was that socialization is puppy to puppy play, that peer group play at any cost. And so, people don't even know. Yes, people need to learn about how to find be more, discriminating in the puppies that they choose. But plenty of people get adult dogs or adolescent dogs, and they're trying to rescue dogs. That's a whole nother thing. But I think it's important to talk about, not only what training is for the average person, but what socialization really should look like and what that means. So that, I think that's another term that the panel, if I may hijack this for a second, you can always tell me to shut up.
I wouldn't dream of that.
to define, what is socialization? Not you.
No, I I agree with you, Kelly. I think that it's very difficult for the average owner to even find really good information about socialization, what it should be. Like, most people know now when they come in, I need to socialize my dog. But they have this image of like a puppy cocktail hour, and they're going to kind of sit with their coffee and watch their puppies roll about. And I think a lot of even well-meaning dog daycare enterprises, even some veterinary offices have said, oh, this is important, let's open up a puppy social hour. And then we have puppies sort of just like freewheeling for an hour without any moderation, without even an expert in the room who can spot problem issues or help to educate the owners about how to handle them. So I feel a tremendous responsibility as a trainer to create as many opportunities as possible for people to come in, both with and without their dogs, get some socialization with professionals who can spot issues and then either relay them back to the owners or do it right there in the moment so that the owners can handle that sort of thing. Because even going a little bit back to Joe's point too, sometimes people have a very difficult to socialize puppy. And for us to say, oh, just give them treats every time you hear a noise or every time you see something weird isn't sufficient. And thinking about how like she's going out with the Malinois, she's a professional, and she's going, oh, this is going to be a lot of work, and doing some of that nuanced stuff that we were just saying earlier, we don't want owners to have to learn how to do. So all that to say, we need to help create some opportunities where we can influence this and help to make sure that those puppies who are more challenged get what they need in this socialization process. And then, of course, helping with the regular sort of easier to socialize puppies too.
And I want to go back to you when you said, obviously we playing catch up game, and you and I and all of the trainers know that, but the owners don't understand. And unfortunately, we don't show up in the picture until they already have the dog. And unfortunately, I mean, if a very minimum they could do is research the breed, that would be great, but they don't even research the breed. They just buy, an 80-year-old couple buys a husky in a condo downtown somewhere and wonder why this thing goes in circles or border colors. So not only they're not even researching the breed, which, would be so helpful, but the problem is the heart gets in the way. And we have so many customers and families. In fact, we just trained a family's dog. It belongs to a very big high profile customer who has access to just about any breeder financially in the world. And they went and got a dog from the Amish family, which, nothing against Amish people, but this particular dog grew up in a livestock environment, has never seen other people, has never been socialized. In fact, that puppy is in one of my video clips, and I'm not going to mention which one. But and I asked, why would you do this? Why wouldn't you just leave? And they, I cannot tell you how many times it happens. The person says, I feel so bad. I felt like I rescued the dog and I just took it out of the bad environment. That's when we hold our head and say, you just did the opposite. You encourage that breeder to keep producing because they just made money. And not only that, they can say, so-and-so, such a big high profile person just bought that puppy from me. So I must make pretty good puppies. How do we get to these people? Like you and I don't look up how to change an oil unless, how to change a tire in my car unless my tire pops. We don't really look up how to fix something. So I wonder, how we can get to these people before they go out to a pet store or, a puppy mill and get a dog just because they feel sad and they feel sorry for the puppy, including the puppy at the shelter. I love all these dogs, but when I ask interviewing a family, I ask people, what made you choose this puppy? This puppy is not a good choice for family with 5 kids, a lifestyle that's really loud and energetic. This is a puppy that's very timid and terrified, and it's a little bit older puppy, so we're already behind a few months. And they always say, well, he was the only calmest puppy in the shelter. He was the only quiet puppy in the corner that wasn't jumping on the fence to greet me. So how do we get to these people before they get to the puppy?
I think we did precisely with these short type of videos. What would you like, this or this? That's short. A dog taking a dump on the carpet, or a dog that goes out on side, sits by the door, and then eliminates on cue. A dog you can touch, a dog you can't. And but I think it's educating the owners. We can't just moan at the choices they make. And I would like to say a wonderful thing for owners. It's like, to me, we all know they pick the wrong genes in the dog. They pick the wrong breed. It's not socialized. It's all so wrong when you think about it. Yet you see them playing in the dog park. And by and large, because there's some dog park people like, oh, we don't go to dog parks, too dangerous. No, it's not. There's a bunch of owners there with a bunch of dogs, and they're playing quite happily. Don't see too many dog trainers in this park, though, because they can't take their dogs there. So by and large, owners take, which is, to me, is essentially a defective product, and they turn it into a dog that actually goes to the dog park once a day. I mean, it's like when you look, we all train in different areas. It's Amanda's training in Manhattan. It shocked me when I went to this dog park. I've never seen so many dogs, all together, and there wasn't a scuffle. It was wonderful. So I think owners do a pretty good job with what they get. I want them to make it better for them, to make it sparkle. And I think when they see this summit, they will realize there's two types of dog out there. One that has received this education, communication, since it came out, when it was neonate, before its eyes and ears open, and those that don't. And we're gradually pushing dog training backwards. Sirius started at 3 months, and then Kelly, when she took over, pushed it back to, 3 months. She pushed it back 2 months, and then Julie and Rosie doing stuff, pushing it back to 2 and 3 weeks. And when they see the results of this and the type of dog it produces and what it does, they will become believers, and that's what they want. I think they will choose a very different way. But
I think also, so when I used to run my puppy classes, I used to do 4 sessions outside of the class environment where we'd go. There was one public transport where we'd do lots of different public transports. There was one at a farm, there was one in town, and then there was a coffee shop one. And so as trainers, it's nice, and my staff at the time, it was always really nice to get it out of a classroom environment and begin to say. And the thing that I used to try and hammer home is, what do you want out of your dog in real life? Because really, this is part of the socialization that I think is often missed, which is that when you've got a tiny baby little cocker spaniel, then it's lovely to watch it frolic around with the others and jump on it and play and do all that. But when you've got an adult cocker spaniel, yes, it's still nice to look at, watch it socialize with other dogs, but you don't actually want it to give attention to other dogs when you're walking through the city, or when you're sitting at a cafe. It's going to become really annoying if every time another dog comes into a dog friendly cafe, the dog gets up and runs around. And I think, like, we developed what we called an anti-socialization protocol, actually, which was almost which was teaching dogs not to socialize. And we used to say, there's times for the anti-socialization protocol where the rules are the opposite of what you think, where you're actually training your dog not to socialize with the outside world, not to go and see that person, not to go and see that dog. And this bit isn't about giving it, the really good experiences of novelty, because actually we've done that when the dog was younger, and we can continue doing that for the rest of their life. But now we're beginning to educate the dog in our expectations, and our expectations 9 times out of 10 are that I want to be able to run through the park on my daily jog with my dog without it going to say hello to everything. And so I do think that as dog trainers and as dog owners, if we spin it back to the definition of socialization, I think anti-socialization is as important as socialization, based on the merit of we're training the dogs. And especially for specific breeds, I think one of the worst things to happen was those studies that kind of defied the idea of breed and tried to like put out these headlines that breed doesn't matter. Because I actually think that breed, the same way that we look at food brands, supermarket brands, car brands, is one of the best ways to get to owners, to show them so that they can have some idea of what they're getting when they choose a puppy. I think really we should be almost pushing, exacerbating the idea of different breeds for different jobs. And, you know, if you get this breed, it's going to be better than this breed. Because I think that's a good way to actually get into what they already pre-existing ideals and values and things like that. And I think anti-socialization especially is great for particular breeds, like your bully breeds with other dogs and things like that, where there are trends.
To help them understand it. Like I love that term anti-socialization. That's kind of fun. Like, because this is something that I've seen come up a lot in the city with what I was saying of having these sort of 1 hour socializations with no sort of structure to it. There was a nice little bit that I found in one of the videos that I just finished editing for the summit, where I'm explaining to my clients why we're having their puppies settle and then play, settle and then play, like look to them and build attention and then play. And I say something to the effect of, you know, otherwise your puppy's going to come into a room. Their context of, hey, there are other dogs here, is going to prompt them to turn into a tornado. And is that what you want when you're going to get a cup of coffee? And you can hear all the clients in the room go, oh, and, you know, like, so it really is very important just to educate the humans that, yeah, when you're at a coffee shop, you don't want your dog to be a tornado. When you're on a jog, you want them focused on you. So I love the way you're doing that. That's cool.
So this is kind of what I was getting at. We've been talking about socialization, and the word socialization, obviously the base is social, which means, you know, interpersonal relationships. And so many people just associate that with the dog portion of their puppy's education. Whereas I think, Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when you were first talking about socialization, yes, you wanted puppies to bite and play and continue their litter-like activities for their development, but that was mainly about introducing them to lots of different types of people and lots of people doing different things. I would take it even further to, and I think we all do this, I'm not saying that we don't, but I don't think most people understand this, is it's more like acclimation. And again, Joe, did you say like to the specific world that they are going to live in, and maybe a little broader than their specific world, because if you live with a shut-in, you're still going to have to go to the vet a couple times a year and such. But you know, it's what, you know, with Open Paw, we always said, you know, what, you know, part of the selection process for people that were coming to adopt a dog, so often not a puppy, you know, the first question is, what is your lifestyle? What are your expectations? You have to envision your picture of what life with dog is to you, and then dial back, you know, from there. And so socialization to other puppies is great to some degree. You want your dog to be able to function like a normal, you know, citizen. But they should not be necessarily magnetizing to dogs in coffee shops in Manhattan, in the city center plazas. And the anti-socialization is more, I know another way to look at that would be to call that, you know, what handler focus. I mean, that's not really a very sexy term. We could come up with something better than that, right? But you know, turning it on, turning it off. But also, socialization is kind of just to ignore other things in the environment. You know, think of your average person, you know, barring any kind of, you know, phobias, major phobias, you know, you walk down the city streets and you don't make eye contact with every person who passes, and you don't, you know, jump on under someone's back and give them a noogie as they're passing, or say, hi, nice to meet you, you know, bye. Or maybe
unless you're coming out of quarantine and everybody was very friendly.
Problems now.
I think that's the point. I think socialization is actually the foundation of anti-socialization. I think it is for humans too. We socialize and we become habituated to each other so that we're not that important. Therefore, we can afford and we have the emotional stability and the resilience to be able to choose not to do things. When I come back to Ian's original question before, for me, it always, the biggest challenge I think that we come up against as dog trainers when we're training with owners is competing motivators. And I think if you have a good foundation of socialization and a good foundation of anti-socialization layered over top of that, then the biggest challenge of competing motivators that occurs is significantly lessened.
I must jump in because it shoots the questions out of my head. The key word there is habituate. If you ask me to define socialization, it would be, I want to expose a very young puppy starting at 2 to 3 weeks to everything it could possibly meet in its adult life, so it has habituated to it and doesn't go back, oh, I nearly said a bad, back poop crazy, whether it's other dogs or people. So we don't want the dog being upset. That's the whole point of it. The stress level is enormous in these adult dogs. And when they are that way, we can't train them.
We don't want them overly excited or overly upset, right? And it's just, I just tell people we're trying to normalize, like we want to make novelty, normalize novelty.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest problems that as dog trainers that we sometimes make, or that I see often in the industry now, is going the other way, because I think what Ian said is bang on. It's about resilience, isn't it? And in order to create resilience, we have to first have stress. So it's about creating these little stress inoculations where the animal learns to recover frequently. And I think sometimes when I look at the way dog training and the way socialization or anti-socialization, but particularly socialization is done, is that we're trying not to create any stress at all. And I don't think that's what you mean. I don't think that's right. I think we do want stress. We do want little bits of stress where the animal's learning to recover frequently enough to become resilient.
Yeah, I see this so much, especially as an urban dog trainer dealing with the kind of chaos that dogs are expected to handle in Manhattan. And there's a lot in the dog training world, especially when I was first starting out as a trainer, where I'd go to a conference and it's always about avoidance.
Yeah.
And then slow dosing, right? So it's like, first remove the dog from everything and then slow dose them back in. And I used to hang out after every conference and ask the trainer who was speaking, like, hey, what do you do when you can't avoid? Because where I come from, it's not possible. Like you literally can't. And I get some really cool little like piecemeal answers until I was able to come up with some different designs for training programs. But I think that it comes from a good place. Like we care so much about dogs that a lot of times as trainers, we see them feel that little bit of stress or we see that little bit of discomfort and we go, oh, I must be doing something wrong, especially as new trainers, right? So it's like, I must be doing something wrong. Let me like isolate and try to figure out how to fix this, when sometimes it's not as bad as you thought. And sometimes it is I like that word inoculation. It's that little bit, if I, as a professional, can help moderate this in a way that exposes the dog, helps them to become okay with it, habituates them, creates resilience, then that's better for me to help a dog learn how to go to the dog run, even when there is the occasional scuffle. There's a scuffle, you come over to me. Then for me to go, oh, dog runs are evil, I'm just never going to go, especially in the city where it's the only place your dog can be off leash. So
for me, socialization is about rehearsing recovery.
Yeah, nice. That's a great thing. I think, and Julie, a lot of your program handles this with the working dogs, right? I mean, I think a lot of people could learn how to socialize better their companion dog, especially for something like Manhattan, if they watch someone like Julie's puppy program. I think
we raise not only service and therapy puppies, but so basically out of the litter that we raise and just scientifically created this way of making these puppies stronger and stronger by day, turning them into Navy SEALs. So out of those puppies, I created a puppy temperament test. It's a 20-step temperament test, and I can talk more a little bit about it in a private interview to tell people how to do this. It should be available soon. We have our Ultimate Canine University in the works right now, online school, but it will be available for breeders and other future puppy owners, so they can kind of use some of these steps to evaluate the puppy's behavior in the litter and say, okay, this puppy is for me or not for me, or this puppy at the shelter is good for my family or not good. They'll be able to use some of these tools we use. But even with these puppies that we train daily to be little Navy SEALs, not every one of those puppies will pass with their service work. And so out of those puppies, we will dismiss some to families, and families get amazing family companion pets because these puppies are socialized and environmentally neurologically stimulated through the roof. And then they will just continue on. You can't just stop there. They continue on to go on. And we have a lot of clients like you, Amanda, they want puppies that are environmentally solid, stable to live in Manhattan. And those puppies, believe it or not, nearly have to be as close to a service temperament puppy as possible. You know, if we have a family that calls us and they say, no, I live in a regular, subdivision, I'm not in Manhattan, but I have 5 kids. The puppy we're going to choose for them is going to be a service quality puppy, because this puppy needs to be able to be okay with things that dogs are normally scared of, screaming and banging and mom dropping a skillet, and then suddenly a little Johnny's crying because he fell on top of the puppy, and the world is going crazy around them. And so desensitizing them and socializing them, it's literally almost an art. And I think by maybe every trainer had that available to owners online, YouTube videos and things like this. This is what to look for in the puppy, which is what I'm working on right now, to have that video available. Here's a few simple things you can do. When you go to a shelter, take the dog into a room or into a play yard. I'm sure there's some kind of meet and greet area. Run through these simple steps. And if the dog reacts like this, like that, that's good. If the dog reacts like this, okay, maybe that's not the dog for your lifestyle. And the same thing with puppies. It's a 20-step temperament test. And depending on the reaction of the puppy, you're going to have 5 different reactions. You can combine the score at the end and say, okay, this puppy is great for my lifestyle, for my kids, for, being in Manhattan, or, living with a family with 3 kids, or maybe it's not the best match and I should probably move on. And I think maybe this is the way to reach people, reach people and, and show them, if you show up to the breeder, none of these puppies are doing these things, you need to leave. You should not buy a puppy from that breeder. You need to go to the breeder that had put some work into these puppies from the day they were born.
I want to change topics now. We're running out of time. I just looked at my watch. Just to summarize, what is the early enrichment socialization process? Are novel stimuli stressful? Yes, you get little cortisol spikes. However, within hours, days, you can build up a young puppy, a 3-week-old, 4-week-old puppy, to take an enormous amount of noise, action, clamor, as you'll see when you watch the summit. When you present these same stimuli to an adult dog that's had this level of enrichment, you barely get a little cortisol blip. But if the dog has not been exposed this way, its adrenals empty. And that poor dog is shaking and in terror. To me, not to socialize is just downright cruel. Sadly, though, a lot of people are scared of it. A lot of trainers, a lot of breeders, they think, oh, it's going to stress the puppy. No, we must expose the puppy to everything it's going to meet in real life, and then it won't react badly in real life. And so we can train it to do fun things, which I want to go back to, games. I want to, the ways to make training sparkle. I think owners are the secret weapon to change things. Owners can change breeders. Owners can change trainers. So I think we should provide a class that's fun. And when we play games, it's amazingly motivating. I've never seen quicker learning in owners when you say, right, next week, a prize, the dog that balances a biscuit longest on its nose. Imagine, and they come back and you've got dogs that do it for 2 to 3 minutes. If I'd said to them, right, homework tonight is sit stays. Well, how do you balance a biscuit on your nose? You running around and jumping on people? No, you're in a sit stay. So basically they come back with this great sit stay. So more benefits of games. To me, playing games offers everything that we want to give to owners so they can give it to their dog. So we've mentioned that it motivates them. We've mentioned that it normalizes the people. They now smile and talk to their dog and clap their hands. What else do playing games
Well, it's relationship. It builds relationship, because
Absolutely.
ultimately dog training is relational, and this is why one of you mentioned, I can teach, all these different, Amanda, I think it was you, maybe Julie, I can teach all these things. Julie, it was you. But then if they go home and nobody reinforces anything or tries anything or practices at all, I mean, you don't have to drill, but you do have to interact, and dogs aren't robots, and it's not immediately, transferable. So relationship is huge, and games enhance relationship. And when you're on the same team as somebody, it's team building,
Well, and
I think
your team member is your dog.
Yeah.
Now the dog's on your team and you're doing something together. Yeah.
I think the other good thing about games,
raises criteria and increases your relevance. So it's just
Say that again.
it naturally raises criteria without having to describe what raising criteria is. Right? So it's like, we're going to play musical chairs now. The distraction level during musical chairs is insane, and the focus level of the humans on their dog is unbelievable. And so I love that it just increases all of those D's we want to increase. Probably runs through your 3 eyes as well, just to play a game.
I think that naturally, just because of what is the activities that are synonymous when we talk about games, it increases movement, and the movement of the human and the movement of the dog. And of course, this is going to raise things like dopamine level, and it's going to get people more aroused and therefore more engaged and more committed to what they're doing. So just in and of itself, I think there's nothing worse than a still class. There's nothing worse than a training session where someone has stood or sat in one place. The more that the dog and the human can move, the better it's always going to be.
Yeah, until they've heard your talk on dopamine, let's just say it raises smiles and tail wags and hugs. It normalizes people. They interact. But also the notion Amanda mentioned, criteria. The owners know where they are. They know absolutely the level of control over their dog. They will strive to do better. Like the 3 of you that compete, when you drive to Winnemucca or wherever, with your dog for 3 days in a hotel or camping outside, to get in the ring for 20 minutes? What really makes you happy that day? Your dog did well, or you place. And the wonderful thing about a dorky game, whether it's musical chairs, as Amanda mentioned, whether it's rocket recalls or recall races, there's only one fastest dog. And people will strive and work for that. And once they know where they are, what is their dog standard, what was their personal best together, when they surpass it, they're going to celebrate with the dog. And this is everything we're trying to teach them to do. Keep records, how good is your dog, and then try and make it better.
But your personal best. I love that. Your personal best, though.
Yes,
because
personal best. And I used to do that walking around the block when dogs pooped. Remember little Oso? When Oso would poop on cue perfectly, backing up the hill, I would say, Oso, yes! The poop rolled perfectly between your 4 legs down the hill. I'm sorry, but it would make me praise him for pooping, so I didn't have poop in the house. But you're right, your personal best together. This is what I think this whole summit is all about.
Sometimes we forget why people got dogs. We maybe get dogs because we're geeky and we like to practice, but most people get dogs to have fun with their dog. They envision themselves frolicking on the beach or laying around having a picnic. So let's give that to them while they're also helping to improve their relationship and make that training stronger.
And they also dream about sitting on the couch and hugging their dog, but they can't touch it. That's why the early enrichment of socialization. It's like being married and you reach for your wife and don't touch me. You don't know how. So, human analogies are wonderful.
I think games also provide, when you were talking about criteria, I think the other thing that I love about games for owners is that it does provide a clear criteria. It provides a very clear way of being able to establish black and white like kind of this is what is acceptable, and this is a pass, and this isn't a pass. And I think that actually that's brilliant, because I think there isn't enough of that in dog training often for dogs or for owners, and it gives us a really clear way of being able to say to the owners, like, this exercise is enjoyable to you because you know exactly how to succeed. You know that you have to do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to get you to success. Now you've got to provide those sorts of gains for your dog so that they also know how to succeed by achieving X, Y, and Z. It has to be clear.
Yeah, we're going to have to say goodbye now. I'd like to just comment, Rose. You're absolutely right that it used to be, say, competition was deathly. It's like people had died. And a good friend of mine, Gail Burnham, play training your dog, the judge came up to her and said, "You smiled at your dog." He said, "Yeah, I always smile at my dog. I mean, get lost." And now training has really come a long way. And in the last, I would say, 40 years, it really has improved. I think we can make it still better. But when I go back to all the videos that you've made, thank you. The words that are coming up in nearly every trainer's video now are engagement, focus, relationship, communication. It wasn't that way 50 years ago. It was sit, jerk him. That was it. This is what the trainer would say to the owner, and then the poor owner had to jerk their dog. Now we have many different techniques, and not just, I'm talking about the reward training positive stuff, but many different reward training techniques to choose from. That we can vary according to the exercise and the owner. Anyway, this has been wonderful. It's lovely listening to you all. Every time I interrupt, I hate myself. I just want you all to know that, right? It's always been a problem ever since I was a little boy. The number of times I got into trouble with my mouth. I just couldn't keep it closed. You've been brilliant. Everyone's going to enjoy this summit. And I know the reason I got the four of you together for the panel, I wanted you all to meet, and some of you don't know each other, and to chat. When you see each other's presentations, you're going to go, "Oh, wow. Yep, even dog trainers are going to be wowed by this summit. Owners are going to love it." And what I care most about is, for you doggy owners out there, whether you're trainers or not, your dog's going to be really happy that you listen to all these wonderful speakers. So thank you. You guys are my friends. I respect you very much. I think you made this panel fun. I could actually sit back and listen instead of monopolizing it, which I really try not to do, but there we go. So I want you all to wave and say goodbye to everyone for listening. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye. And thank you for coming. Rosie, Julie, Amanda, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.